The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was silent. 500 alien representatives sat in tall seats that curved around the room like a giant bowl. All eyes were on the single human woman who stood in the center. Dr. Eleanor Chen kept her head high. She was tired after standing for 6 hours, but she would not show weakness. Not now, when the future of humanity was being decided. "The council has reached its decision," announced the head council member. He was a tall, blue-skinned alien with 4 arms and eyes that glowed like distant stars. His voice boomed through the hall. "Humanity is too dangerous to join the galactic community." Eleanor's heart sank, but she kept her face calm. She had expected this, but hearing it still hurt. "But we have followed all your rules," she said. "Humans have stopped all wars. We cleaned our planet. We developed faster than light. Travel without destroying ourselves. What more do you want from us?" The head council member tapped his long fingers on the desk. "It is not what you have done, but what you might do. Your species reached space travel only 300 years after discovering electricity. Other species took thousands of years to do the same." "And that's a bad thing?" Eleanor asked. "It is concerning," said another council member, a small creature that looked like a talking plant. "You humans adapt too quickly. You change too fast. You are unpredictable. The council prefers stability." Eleanor looked around the room. Some alien faces showed fear. Others showed hate. A few looked sad or sorry, but none looked ready to help. "So what happens to us now?" she asked. "Humanity will be relocated," said the head council member. "All humans on Earth and your colony planets will be moved to the Sagittarius Void." Eleanor felt cold fear run through her. The Sagittarius Void was a nearly empty area between the spiral arms of the galaxy. Few stars, fewer planets, almost no resources. It was a death sentence. "You can't do this," she shouted. "There are 15 billion humans. The Void can't support that many people." "Our decision is final," said the head council member. "Transport ships are already heading to your worlds. Resistance is not advised. Our technology is far beyond yours." Eleanor looked at the small device on her wrist. It was supposed to be a communicator to talk with Earth's leaders, but it had been silent for days. Now she understood why. The council had already started their plan. "When?" she asked quietly. "The relocation begins tomorrow," said the head council member. "It will take approximately 1 Earth month to move your entire species." "And if we refuse?" The room grew even more silent than before. "Then we will move you by force," said the head council member. "And many will die." "Is that what you want for your people, Ambassador Chen?" Eleanor closed her eyes for a moment. There was no way out. Earth's military was nothing compared to the council's forces. Fighting would only lead to death. "We will comply," she said finally. "But mark my words. This is a mistake. Humanity deserves better." "The council session is ended," announced the head council member, ignoring her words. The aliens began to leave, some talking in low voices. Eleanor stood alone in the middle of the giant room, feeling the weight of 15 billion lives on her shoulders. 1 month later, Eleanor stood at the window of the last transport ship. Below her, Earth grew smaller and smaller. The beautiful blue planet, home to humanity for thousands of years, was now forbidden to them. The ship was crowded. People were scared and angry. Children cried. Old people sat in silence, many too shocked to speak. "Dr. Chen," said a voice behind her. She turned to see Captain Rodriguez of the ship's crew. "We're approaching the barrier." Eleanor nodded and followed him to the bridge. On the main screen, she could see the line of sentinel stations that formed a ring around the Sagittarius Void. These automated machines would make sure no human ships could leave the area. The council was taking no chances. "Send a message to all the other ships," Eleanor said. "Tell everyone to prepare for the jump to the Void." As the captain gave the order, Eleanor looked at the stars beyond the barrier. Somewhere out there, thousands of alien species were going about their lives, trading, exploring, learning from each other. And humanity would have no part in it. "Dr. Chen," said a young woman who worked as her assistant. "What will we do now?" Eleanor turned to face the bridge crew. Their faces showed fear but also determination. These were the best of humanity, scientists, engineers, doctors, and leaders who had been chosen to guide their people in this new, harsh environment. "We will do what humans have always done," Eleanor said, her voice strong and clear. "We will adapt. We will survive. And one day we will thrive." She looked back at the barrier they were about to cross. "The council thinks they're punishing us by sending us to the void," she continued. "But they've actually given us freedom. Freedom from their rules and their fears. In the void, we will build something new, something better." The ship's engines hummed as they approached the jump point. "They fear what they don't understand," Eleanor said. "And they don't understand us at all. We will not just survive in the void. We will create an empire so powerful that one day the council will come to us not as judges but as people begging for our help." The stars stretched into lines as the ship made the jump. Earth and the council worlds disappeared, replaced by the dark emptiness of the Sagittarius void. Humanity's exile had begun. But as Eleanor looked at the determined faces around her, she felt something unexpected. Hope. The council had made a serious mistake. They had feared humanity's potential, so they had removed all limits on what humans could become. And one day, the galaxy would learn just how big that mistake had been. 50 years had passed since humanity was forced into the Sagittarius void. What the Galactic Council had intended as a prison had slowly become something else entirely. From the observation deck of Haven Station, Dr. Maya Okafor watched a fleet of mining ships return from the asteroid belt. The ships looked nothing like the sleek vessels of the Galactic Council. These were rough, practical machines built from whatever materials humans could find in this resource-poor region of space. "Dr. Okafor, the test results are ready," said her assistant, a young man named Thomas. Maya nodded and followed him to the lab. At 68 years old, she walked with a slight limp, a reminder of the early difficult years in the void. She had been only 18 when the exile began, one of thousands of science students who had to abandon their education to help humanity survive. The lab was busy with researchers working on dozens of different projects. In the center was a clear chamber containing what appeared to be empty space, but Maya knew better. Inside was something that might change everything. "The readings are stable," Thomas said, pointing to the screen. "The energy output increased by 20% since yesterday." Maya smiled. "Show me the pattern analysis." On the screen appeared a complex web of lines and colors that represented energy flows. To most people, it would look like meaningless chaos, but Maya had spent 30 years studying the strange physics of the void, and she could see the pattern clearly. "It's beautiful," she whispered. When humans first arrived in the void, they had struggled to survive. The few habitable planets were small and had poor soil. The asteroid belts had some useful minerals, but not the rich resources they were used to. Energy was the biggest problem. Solar power didn't work well around the dim stars of the void, and fuel was scarce. But then Maya had noticed something strange. Their instruments detected random energy spikes that seemed to come from empty space itself. Most scientists dismissed this as instrument errors or background radiation, but Maya thought it might be something more. "The council species never found this energy because they weren't looking for it," Maya explained to a group of new researchers. "They have so many resources that they never needed to look deeper, but we did." She pointed to the chamber. "The void isn't empty at all. It's filled with quantum particles that exist between normal space. We just needed to learn how to see them, and now, how to use them." The particles Maya had discovered could be harvested and converted into massive amounts of clean energy. Her team had built the first small prototype of what they called a void engine, a power source that drew energy directly from the quantum fabric of space itself. If it worked at full scale, energy would never be a problem for humanity again. The gas giant planet Olympus, Governor Carlos Liu stood on the balcony of his floating city. Below him stretched endless clouds of blue and purple, swirling in patterns that never repeated. Above, the transparent dome that protected the city showed a sky filled with other floating structures. Farms, factories, homes for millions of people. When humans first came to the void, everyone had ignored the gas giants. They had no solid surface to stand on, murderous gravity and poisonous atmospheres. But Carlos had seen potential where others saw only danger. The council species build on solid ground because that's what they know, he had argued 50 years ago. But we don't have enough rocky planets, we need to think differently. Now Olympus was home to 15 floating cities, each housing over 1 million people. The strong gravity that should have made life impossible actually helped. The humans had built structures that used the planet's magnetic field to stay aloft, riding the currents like birds on the wind. "Governor, the new agricultural dome is ready for inspection," said his aide. Carlos nodded and followed her inside. At 80 years old, he was one of the few left who remembered Earth clearly. Sometimes he missed the blue skies and green fields of his homeland. But then he would look at what humanity had built here, and the pride would wash away the sadness. The new agricultural dome was enormous, filled with plants that had been engineered to thrive in the strange light of void stars. Some looked like corn or wheat, but with purple or blue leaves that could capture more energy from the dim sunlight. Production should be 30% higher than the old design, the agriculture director explained. Enough to feed another 100,000 people. Carlos smiled. Excellent. What about the new strains for the outer atmosphere farms? Even better. The floating algae fields are already producing oxygen and protein. They practically grow themselves. This was how humanity had survived, by changing everything they knew. On Earth, they had grown crops in soil under a yellow sun. Here they grew engineered plants in floating fields under strange stars. On Earth, they had built cities on solid ground. Here they built them in the clouds. The council had been right about one thing. Humans were adaptable. But they hadn't understood what that really meant. Back at Haven Station, Maya Okafor stood before the Human Coalition Council, the leaders who had replaced Earth's old governments. "The first full-size void engine is ready," she announced. "If it works as the prototype did, it will produce enough energy to power this entire station, without fuel, without pollution, forever." The council members looked at each other. Hope was a dangerous thing in the void. They had all learned to be cautious. "And if it fails?" asked one of the council members. "Then we try again," Maya said simply. "But it won't fail." The activation was scheduled for the next day. Maya barely slept that night. This wasn't just another power source. If it worked, it would change everything. Energy had always been the limiting factor for human expansion in the void. Without it, they could only grow so much, build so much, explore so far. With unlimited clean energy, there would be no more limits. As the countdown reached 0, Maya held her breath. The void engine hummed, drawing in the invisible particles that filled the empty space around them. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the lights throughout the station brightened. Computer screens came fully alive. Systems that had been kept on minimal power for decades suddenly ran at full strength. The void engine wasn't just working, it was producing twice the energy they had predicted. Maya looked at the faces around her. Shock, joy, disbelief. She thought of the Galactic Council, who had thrown humanity away like garbage. They had meant the void to be humanity's grave. Instead, it had become the birthplace of a new power, one that would eventually reach far beyond the barriers they had built to contain it. A century had passed since humanity's banishment to the Sagittarius void. The scattered group of struggling colonies had grown into a thriving network of worlds and stations, all powered by void engines. The humans of this new generation were different from their ancestors who had been exiled from Earth. Captain Sarah Kwan stood on the bridge of her exploration vessel, the Pathfinder. At 32 years old, she had never seen Earth. She had been born on Olympus, one of the floating cities in the clouds of a gas giant. The void was the only home she had ever known. "Captain, we're approaching the moon," said her navigator. Sarah nodded. "Take us into orbit." The small rocky moon looked like thousands of others they had mapped in the void. lifeless, airless, and cold, but their sensors had detected something unusual beneath its surface. Energy readings that didn't match any known natural pattern. Sarah touched the small device behind her ear. Immediately, her vision changed as her AI companion, Atlas, connected directly to her mind. "What do you think, Atlas?" she asked silently. The AI's voice answered in her thoughts. "The energy signature is artificial, not natural. Someone built something down there." This was what made humans of the Void different from both their ancestors and the Galactic Council species. While the Council feared AI and kept it separate from organic life, humans had embraced a complete merger of human and machine intelligence. Every child was paired with an AI companion at birth. By adulthood, the two were partners in the truest sense, neither master nor servant, but two minds working as one. "Landing team, prepare for deployment," Sarah ordered. "Full environmental gear and scanning equipment." The Pathfinder settled onto the moon's surface near the energy source. Sarah led the team of 5 explorers across the dusty ground to a small crater. Their scanners pointed to something buried beneath it. "Begin excavation," she ordered. The team set up mining drones that carefully removed the moon's surface layer by layer. After 3 hours, they uncovered a smooth metallic door embedded in the rock. "It's not human," said Dr. Reyes, the team's scientist. "The material isn't anything we've made." "Could it be from the Council?" Sarah asked. Dr. Reyes shook his head. "No, this is much older. The dating puts it at least 5 million years. Sarah felt a chill run through her body. 5 million? That's before any known species achieved space travel. She approached the door. There were no obvious handles or controls, just a smooth surface with patterns etched into it. As she studied the patterns, Atlas spoke in her mind. "Those look like neural pathways," the AI said, "similar to the connections in a human brain." Sarah placed her gloved hand on the door. Nothing happened. "The glove is blocking direct contact," Atlas suggested. "Try touching it with your bare skin." This was dangerous on an airless moon, but Sarah trusted her partner. She carefully removed her glove, then pressed her hand against the cold metal. For just a second before putting the glove back on, the patterns on the door began to glow with a soft blue light. Then silently the door slid open. "How did you do that?" Dr. Reyes asked in amazement. "I think it responded to the neural link between me and Atlas," Sarah explained. "It wanted to connect with a merged consciousness." The team carefully entered the structure. Inside, they found a single room with a pedestal in the center. On the pedestal sat a small, glowing cube. "What is it?" one of the team members asked. "Some kind of technology from an ancient species," Dr. Reyes said, scanning it. "The precursors." Even the Galactic Council considered the precursors to be mostly a myth, an advanced species that had supposedly lived millions of years ago and then disappeared. There had never been any proof they existed at all. Until now. When the team brought the cube back to the Pathfinder, they discovered it was some kind of data storage device. But its technology was so advanced that even their best scientists couldn't access the information inside. "It's not responding to any of our attempts to interface with it," Dr. Reyes reported after a week of tests. Sarah looked at the cube thoughtfully. "It responded to my neural link with Atlas when we found it. Maybe that's the key." The scientists set up a careful experiment. Sarah would touch the cube while fully linked with Atlas, allowing the AI to monitor what happened and pull back if there was danger. When Sarah placed her hands on the cube, it began to glow brightly. Images flooded into her mind. Stars, planets, strange buildings on unknown worlds. Atlas helped her organize the flood of information, creating a buffer between her human brain and the ancient device. "It's working," she gasped. "I can see so much." For an hour, she sat motionless as the cube shared its knowledge. When it finally went dark, Sarah looked up at the team with wide eyes. "I know what it is," she said. "It's a key, a test. The precursors left their technology all over the void, but they locked it so only a species with the right kind of evolution could access it." "What kind of evolution?" Dr. Reyes asked. "A species that merged organic and artificial intelligence," Sarah explained. That's why the Council never found this. They separate their AIs from their organic life. Only humans have created this kind of partnership. Over the next 6 months, exploration teams found more precursor artifacts throughout the void. Each one contained technology beyond anything humans or the Council had developed. Faster engines, better power sources, medical technology that could heal almost any injury or disease. It seemed the void wasn't a prison at all. It was a vault, filled with treasures left by an ancient species, and the key to that vault was humanity's unique approach to technology, the very thing the Council had feared. In the main laboratory on Haven Station, scientists gathered around another precursor device. This one was larger than the cube, a sphere that floated above its stand without any visible support. Dr. Reyes, now the head of precursor research, addressed the group. This device contains the biggest discovery yet. The precursors had technology that could alter space itself, creating shortcuts between distant points. Wormholes? Someone asked. Something similar but more stable, Dr. Reyes confirmed. If we can understand this technology, we could travel anywhere in the galaxy almost, instantly, even beyond the sentinel stations that keep us contained. One of the younger scientists looked nervous. If we can leave the void, what will we do about the Council? They banished us here. A woman stepped forward from the back of the room. She was old, her hair white, her face lined with age. But her eyes were sharp and clear. It was Dr. Eleanor Chen, the ambassador who had stood before the Council a century ago. Now, 136 years old, kept alive by the medical technology they had developed. She was one of the last who remembered Earth directly. "We will do what humans have always done," she said, her voice still strong. "We will adapt. We will grow. And when the time is right, we will return, not as exiles, but as equals, perhaps even as teachers." She looked at the precursor sphere, floating impossible above its stand. "The Council feared what we might become," she continued, "and they were right to fear us, but not because we are dangerous, because we are different. We see possibilities where they see only risks, and now the universe itself has rewarded that vision. 200 years had passed since humanity's banishment. The Sagittarius Void, once a prison, was now the center of the most advanced civilization in the galaxy, though the Galactic Council didn't know it yet. Admiral James Chen, the great-grandson of Dr. Eleanor Chen, stood on the observation deck of the Guardian, the flagship of the human fleet. At 45 years old, he commanded humanity's defense forces, though they had never fought a real battle. The sentinel stations that formed the barrier around the void still prevented any human ship from officially leaving. "Officially. Admiral, we've received the latest reports from our observers," said his second-in-command, Commander Indira Singh. James nodded. "Let's see them." A large holographic display appeared in the center of the room, showing the galaxy beyond the void. Small points of light marked the locations of Council worlds and trade routes. Certain areas were highlighted in red. "The disruptions are spreading," Indira explained. 3 more major trade routes have reported navigation system failures. 5 agricultural worlds in the Orion sector are experiencing crop failures. And the AI plague has now affected 27 Council systems. James studied the display carefully. "Any patterns?" "Yes, sir. All affected systems use older technology that can't adapt to the changing conditions. The newer Council ships and colonies are managing better, but they're still struggling." This was the secret that humanity had discovered through the precursor artifacts. The galaxy itself was changing. The space between stars was becoming less stable, with subtle shifts in quantum fields that affected technology, biology, and even gravity. The precursors had predicted this change millions of years ago and had left their technology specifically to help whatever species found it survive the transition. Humans, with their adaptive approach to technology and their void engines that worked with these quantum fluctuations rather than against them, were perfectly suited to this new galaxy. The Council species, with their rigid and unchanging technologies, were not. "What about our explorers?" James asked. Indira smiled. "The stealth system is working perfectly. 20 observation teams have been deployed throughout Council space, and none have been detected. This was humanity's greatest secret. 10 years ago, scientists had finally understood enough of the precursor technology to develop what they called phase shifting, a method that allowed ships to partially exist in a different dimension, making them invisible to normal sensors. With this technology, human vessels could pass through the Sentinel stations undetected. But rather than launching an invasion or seeking revenge, humanity had chosen to observe. Small teams in phase-shifted ships traveled throughout Council space, studying the effects of the galactic changes and monitoring the Council's response. They still don't know what's happening, Indira said. They think it's a series of unrelated problems, technical failures, environmental changes, maybe even sabotage. They don't see the bigger picture. James nodded. And what about our expansion? Indira changed the display to show the void itself. Unlike the Council space map, this one showed hundreds of thriving colonies, space stations, and mining operations. Colony 47 is now fully operational, she reported. The terraforming process was completed 2 months ahead of schedule. That brings our total population to just over 40 billion. 40 billion people, almost 3 times the number that had been exiled 2 centuries ago. Using precursor technology and void engines, humans had transformed dead worlds into habitable ones. They had built massive space habitats that housed millions. They had even created artificial planets using gravity technology that the Council would consider impossible. And the new drive systems? James asked. The first ships equipped with jump drives will be ready next month, Indira said. Based on our tests, they should be able to travel from one end of the galaxy to the other in less than a week. James smiled. This was the culmination of 2 centuries of work, ships that could instantly travel anywhere without using the traditional hyperspace lanes that the Council controlled. With jump drives, the entire galaxy would be open to humanity. Sir, Indira said hesitantly, now that we have this technology, what will we do? Many people want to go back and confront the Council, to show them that we've not only survived, but thrived. James walked to the window and looked out at the stars. My great-grandmother used to say that the Council feared us because they didn't understand us. But fear isn't overcome with more fear. Revenge isn't our way forward. Then what is? Indira asked. Before James could answer, an alert sounded. A communication officer called out, Admiral, we've received an emergency signal from Observer Team 12 in the Council core worlds. Put it through, James ordered. A holographic image appeared of a woman in a stealth suit. She looked worried. Admiral Chen, something major is happening. The Arxer fleet is mobilizing around the Council citadel. All their ships are armed for combat. James frowned. The Arxer were one of the oldest Council species known for their military power. They served as the Council's enforcers, putting down rebellions and protecting important systems. Do we know why? He asked. Not exactly, the observer replied. But there are rumors of some kind of energy wave coming from the galactic core. The Council's scientists are in a panic. They're saying it could disable most of their technology. James and Indira exchanged glances. They knew what this was. The most significant phase of the galactic change that the precursors had predicted. The void had been protected from its early effects because of its location, but the wave would eventually reach them too. Our ships are ready for it, Indira said quietly. Our technology was designed for these conditions. But the Council's isn't, James replied. If their systems fail, billions could die. He stood silent for a moment, thinking. For 200 years, humanity had built its power in secret, developing technology beyond anything the Council could imagine. They had prepared for this moment, when the galaxy would change in ways that would leave the old powers vulnerable. But James knew that true power wasn't about conquest or revenge. It was about choices. Contact all observer teams, he ordered. I want complete information on the status of every major Council world, and begin preparation for our emergency response fleet. Response fleet? Indira asked, surprised. You mean? Yes, James said firmly. If the Council's systems fail, their people will need help. and we're going to provide it. Even after what they did to us? Indira asked. James looked at the galaxy map, at the billions of lives that might soon be in danger. Especially because of what they did to us, he said. They cast us out because they feared what we might become. Now we'll show them exactly what we've become. Not conquerors, but the people who will save them from extinction. As the Guardian moved into position, James thought about his great-grandmother's words from a century ago. The Council had feared humanity's potential. Now they would see that potential fully realized, not as a weapon but as a shield. 300 years after humanity's banishment, the galaxy faced its greatest crisis. The energy wave that the precursors had predicted millions of years ago finally arrived from the galactic core. Scientists called it the resonance. On the Council Citadel, the grand meeting hall was in chaos. Representatives from hundreds of species shouted and argued as reports of disasters poured in from across Council space. Supreme Chancellor Zari, a tall, blue-skinned alien with 4 arms, tried to maintain order. Please, we must work together to face this threat. But his words were lost in the noise. Screens around the hall showed frightening images. Ships falling out of hyperspace, communication networks failing, defense systems shutting down, and power grids collapsing across dozens of worlds. The wave has disabled 70% of our technology, reported the science minister, a small insect-like being. Our ships can't travel. Our colonies can't call for help. Our food production systems are failing. How is this possible? Demanded one of the council members. Nothing should be able to affect so many different systems at once. The science minister's voice trembled. The resonance is changing the basic properties of space itself. Our technology was never designed to work under these conditions. In the corner of the hall, a group of Arxur military officers whispered together. The Arxur were large reptilian beings with thick scales and sharp teeth. As the Council's military force, they had always been feared and respected. Now, with most Council technology disabled, they were the only ones with a functioning fleet. General Drax, the Arxur commander, stepped forward. The Council has failed to protect its people, he announced, his voice echoing through the hall. In this time of crisis, the Arxur will take control for the safety of all. Chancellor Zari looked alarmed. General, this is exactly the time, Drax interrupted. Our ships still function because they use simpler, more robust technology. Our weapons still work. We can maintain order while the rest of you argue uselessly. General turned to his officers. Secure the Citadel. All council members will remain here under our protection. But everyone in the room knew what protection really meant. This was a military takeover. 3 days later, Chancellor Zari sat alone in his office, now a prisoner in his own citadel. The Arxur guards outside his door made sure he couldn't leave or communicate with anyone without their permission. Reports from across council space told a grim story. Arxur ships had taken control of major worlds claiming to provide emergency aid. But instead of helping, they were setting up military governments and taking resources for themselves. They were waiting for this, Zari realized. They saw the resonance as an opportunity. A soft chime sounded, indicating someone at his door. The guards outside allowed a single visitor to enter, Mira, his most trusted aide. Chancellor, I don't have much time, she whispered. The Arxur are arresting anyone who opposes them. But I had to tell you, there might be hope. Zari looked up sharply. What kind of hope? Some of our deep space sensors detected unusual activity in the Sagittarius void, Mira explained. Ships like nothing we've ever seen before. They appear and disappear from our scans, and they're completely unaffected by the resonance. The void? Zari frowned. There's nothing there except... His eyes widened as he remembered a decision made long before his time. The humans, Mira nodded. It's been 300 years since they were banished. We have no idea what they've become, or if they still exist at all. But if they have ships that can function during the resonance... Zari paced his office, thinking hard. The Council had feared humans because they changed too quickly, adapted too readily. But now those exact qualities might be what the galaxy needed. "Can we contact them?" he asked. "The Arxur control all our long-range communication systems," Mira said. "But I've found an old emergency channel that they don't know about. If the humans are monitoring Council frequencies, they might hear us." Zari didn't hesitate. "Do it. Send a message to the Void." Mira pulled out a small device and quickly typed a short message. It was simple and direct. "We need help. Aboard." The Guardian, Admiral James Chen, received the message personally. He had been expecting something like this since the resonance began, but not so soon. "It's definitely from the Council Citadel," reported his communications officer. "And it matches Chancellor Shari's personal code." James turned to Commander Indira Singh. "What's the status of our response fleet?" "Fully prepared, Admiral," she answered. 20 capital ships and 50 support vessels, all equipped with phase shift technology and jump drives. They can reach the Citadel in less than an hour." James nodded. For years, humanity had prepared for this moment, not to conquer or destroy, but to help. Their ships carried medical supplies, food, and portable void engines that could power critical systems even during the resonance. "The question is," Indira said quietly, "will they accept our help? Or will they still fear us?" "They'll have no choice," James replied. "From what our observers report, the Arxur are taking advantage of the crisis to seize power. If the Council wants to survive, they'll need us." He turned to address the officers on the bridge. "This is the moment humanity has waited for. Not for revenge, but for redemption. We will show the galaxy that we are not the monsters they feared, but the allies they need." James opened a channel to the entire human fleet. "All ships prepare for departure. Our destination is the Council Citadel. Our mission is to provide aid and protection to all affected worlds, regardless of species." He paused, thinking of his great-grandmother and her words from long ago. 300 years ago, "The Council cast us out because they feared what we might become," he continued. "Today they will see exactly what we have become. Not conquerors, but saviors." On the Council Citadel, Shari watched anxiously as the Arxur guards became more aggressive. General Drax had ordered the arrest of anyone who questioned his authority, and the prisons were filling quickly. "The General wants to see you," a guard announced, entering Zari's office without knocking. Shari knew this wasn't a friendly invitation. Once he left this room, he would probably never return. Suddenly, alarms began to sound throughout the Citadel. The guard received a message through his communicator, and his face showed shock. "Unknown ships have appeared in orbit," he shouted. "Hundreds of them, all around the Citadel." Shari rushed to the window. In the sky above, he could see strange vessels unlike any he had ever seen. They seemed to shimmer and shift, as if they weren't fully solid. His communication device chimed with an incoming message. When he answered, a human face appeared on the screen, a man with dark hair and determined eyes. "Chancellor Zari," said Admiral James Chen, "we received your message. The human cooperative is here to help." Zari felt a mix of relief and fear. After 3 centuries, humanity had returned. But what had they become during those long years of exile? And what would they do now that they held the fate of the Council in their hands? The Council Citadel was in chaos. Arxur soldiers ran through the hallways preparing for battle against the human ships that had suddenly appeared in orbit. General Drax stood in the command center, roaring orders to his officers. "Launch all fighters. Target the human vessels," he commanded. "We will not allow these exiles to interfere." On the main screen, they could see the human fleet surrounding the Citadel. The ships were unlike anything the Council had ever built, sleek vessels that seemed to shimmer and phase in and out of normal space. "General, our weapons have no effect," reported an Arxur officer. "The shots pass right through their ships." Drax slammed his fist on the console. "Impossible. Nothing can phase shift while maintaining structural integrity." But the humans had done exactly that. Using precursor technology and their understanding of the resonance, they had created ships that existed partly in another dimension. The Arxur, Weapons, like all Council technology, were designed for normal space only. In his office, Chancellor Zari waited anxiously. The communication screen still showed Admiral James Chen's face. "Chancellor, we're sending a team to your location," James said. "They will escort you to safety." "What about the Arc-Sur?" Zari asked. "They control the Citadel." James smiled slightly. "Not for long." Throughout the Citadel, small teams of humans suddenly appeared in corridors and rooms. They wore suits that allowed them to partially phase, shift, walking through walls and passing through Arc-Sur weaponry. Each team carried small devices that they placed on key systems. Within minutes, the Citadel's power grid and computer network were under human control. Doors closed, trapping Arc-Sur soldiers in sections of the station. Defense systems shut down. And in the command center, General Drax found himself surrounded by humans who had simply walked through the walls. "This is impossible," he growled, reaching for his weapon. The leader of the human team, a woman with calm eyes, shook her head. "I wouldn't do that, General. Your weapon can't hurt us, but ours will definitely hurt you." Drax looked at the strange pistol in her hand. It glowed with the same energy as the human ships. "Who are you?" he demanded. "Commander Maya Chen," she replied. "Great-great-granddaughter of Dr. Eleanor Chen, who stood in this very Citadel 300 years ago when you banished us to the void." The general lowered his weapon, realizing he was defeated. In the main council hall, representatives from across the galaxy gathered once more, but this time humans stood among them. Admiral James Chen addressed the assembly with Chancellor Zari at his side. "The resonance is not a temporary event," James explained. "It is a fundamental change in the nature of space itself. The galaxy you knew is gone forever, but we can help you adapt to the new reality." On the main screen, images showed human ships distributing aid to affected worlds. Engineers installed small void engines to power critical systems. Medical teams treated the injured. Food and supplies reached stranded colonies. 300 years ago, you feared what humanity might become, James continued. You were right to fear us, but wrong about why. Our strength isn't in conquest, but in adaptation. Not in isolation, but in integration. Chancellor Zari stepped forward. The Council admits its error. In our fear, we banished a species that might have been our greatest ally. Now we ask formally, will humanity rejoin the galactic community? James looked around the hall. The faces watching him represented thousands of worlds and trillions of lives. We will not rejoin as a junior member, he said clearly. Humanity has built its own civilization in the void. We have technologies you cannot match. We have an empire that spans worlds you have never seen. We offer partnership, but as equals, not as subjects. The Chancellor nodded slowly. Then let us form a new council together. One that values adaptation as much as stability. One that sees difference as strength, not weakness. As the council members debated the proposal, a small ship docked at the Citadel. From it emerged an elderly woman, supported by two younger humans. Despite her age, her eyes were sharp and her back straight. James rushed to help her. Grandmother, you shouldn't have come. The journey is too risky at your age. Dr. Maya Okafor, now 118 years old, smiled at her grandson. I had to see it, James. After all these years, I had to see the council with my own eyes. She looked around, the grand hall, taking in the aliens who had once condemned humanity to what they thought would be a slow death. Now they waited, hoping for humanity's help. Your great-great-grandmother would be proud, she told James. Eleanor always said we would return one day, not as exiles, but as leaders. In the center of the hall, a new agreement was taking shape, a treaty between humanity and the council species. Under its terms, humans would share their technology to help the galaxy adapt to the resonance. The Sentinel stations that had once imprisoned humanity would be dismantled, and a new governing body would be formed, with representatives from both human and council worlds. The Human Council Cooperative, said Chancellor Zari. A new beginning for all our peoples. As the representatives signed the document, James thought about the long journey that had brought humanity to this moment. From the exile that was meant to destroy them, They had built something extraordinary. Not just an empire of planets and technology, but a new way of thinking. A civilization that embraced change instead of fearing it. The void had not been their prison. It had been their proving ground. Outside the Council citadel, human ships hovered alongside the few Council vessels that still functioned. Engineers from both species were already working together, adapting Council technology to withstand the resonance. On one of these ships, a young Council engineer watched in amazement as her human partner interfaced directly with the ship's computer through his neural link. "How does it feel?" she asked, curious about the connection between human and machine. The human smiled. "It feels like evolution, like growing into what we were always meant to become." He looked out at the stars, knowing that the future would be unlike anything either of their species had imagined. The Council feared what humanity might become, he said. But in the end, what we became was exactly what the galaxy needed.